In February 2026, the Buckinghamshire town of High Wycombe had its first Wyrd Wycombe festival. There was a town crier, folk singers, Morris dancers, and a dragon. Well, I couldn't miss the chance to meet a dragon, could I?
Well, dragons are very much part of English folklore. I think actually there's probably a resurgence of dragons in English folklore.
Which is part of the moat, which goes round here, part of Simon de Montfort's hunting lodge.
The image of the griffin, dragon, or whatever it happens to be that's on their coat of arms is clutching a figure, clutching a victim, and it does look almost like it's a small child.
High Wycombe is a lovely market town set in the Chiltern Hills, around 30 miles to the west of London. It has many old buildings, like a market house from 1604, affectionately known as the Pepper Pot. The remains of a 12th century hospital on the main road to London, and 2 to 3 High Street, which dates from the 14th century. The town is clearly pretty old, but the festival is brand new this year. I wanted to know what's behind it, so I've come here to ask the organisers.
The main reason was because we didn't have one. I mean, Wycombe does have a couple of sort of events that take place. Most notably, it weighs its mayor every year. I think it's the only town in England that puts the mayor on a set of scales and then tells the public whether they've got fat on the public purse during the year they've been in office. But that is something that's much more about the people on stage than the actual audience. I mean, you watch it and you walk away. We wanted something that was a little bit more interactive, a little bit more fun. And I mean, because of my interest in folk history and folklore in general, I've travelled all around the country and seen all these amazing events that take place, you know, like the Pas de Obios or the South Queensbury Barryman, or, you know, there's just every town has got something. And Wycombe didn't have that something. So I mentioned to a friend, Mark, I said, it would be nice if we had a sort of new tradition or something we could kick off in the town so that people would have one day every year where they know, oh, X day is coming up soon, that's always a good laugh. We can come into the town and get people together. That was the big thing.
So this is something about the community then?
It is. It was entirely about doing something for the community.
And I looked at the art show, Mark. You've got an art show in the weeks coming up to it, didn't you?
We did, yeah. We don't really have any big traditions in Wycombe. Used to when I was growing up. We had Wycombe show, we had pageants, we had maypole dancing. We seem to have lost all that. So talking to Steve, and I wanted something new, something different. Because last year we did a pagan Wheel of the Year calendar, and we loved that. So Steve being a folklorist, me being a historian of Wycombe, we started looking around to try and find legends and things in Wycombe that we could photograph. To know what we actually need is a gallery. So we can put them on the wall, we can talk to people when they come in, you know, what are these stories? So you could buy the catalogue with all the stories in, but we would actually talk to you about the legends and what we found. So that's what the gallery was about, and we think somewhere around about 500-600 people come through the gallery over a 2-week period. We made all the props, so we're very much about recycle and repurpose, so, you know, we also are in a group called Wycombe Creatives, which is about 300 different people in Wycombe, all from the creative background, where we just called on people's resources. And so we made props, we made masks, we made all sorts of stuff. But again, it's all about people feeling and touching. I'm very much into a tactile side of art, that, you know, art shouldn't be behind glass cabinets, it should be felt, touched, used, and you get something from that.
So we started hunting around and doing the research for local myths and legends, anything we could tie this into. And suddenly I came across this booklet by a guy called Clive Harper, which showed us that actually Wycombe had its own dragon myth. And we thought, oh my God, we've got a dragon. We've got a dragon. How do we not know about this?
Good people of Wycombe, gather ye round, for I've a tale to tell about the terrible Wycombe Wyrm. So listen you, and listen you well. Our tale begins on a summer's day, down at the river Cleaver, when a servant girl was sent to fetch some water from the weir. But as she knelt and dipped the pond, a worm appeared with thrashing tail. It flashed its teeth and roared aloud, and made the maiden spill her pail. She reached into her apron, some crusts and crumbs she found. She threw them to the hungry worm, who quickly ate them down. And every day the worm appeared, when to the stream she came. She brought it treats of crumbs and bread, and bones of beef and lamb. Through summer heat and autumn rain, the worm it grew and grew. But come the winter ice and frosts, it vanished from her view. Months did pass, and spring returned, with snowdrops, briar and thorn. And still the maiden dipped the pond, and hoped to see the worm return. Return it did, but what a shock! The beast had grown 10 times in size, and 10 times too its belly grewed. It eyed the maid with hungry eyes. The worm, it lunged, and our fair lass, to make of her a bloody mess. But she was quick and ran away. She tripped and fell, and tore her dress. The villagers were sorely vexed. They feared the worm would take their sheep. Until the worm was put to death, no villager dared to sleep. And so they begged their lord and master, a brave and noble Templar knight, to rid them of the fearsome beast, so they could once more sleep at night. The knight put on his armour, and sharpened up his sword, and the villagers took up their tools, and followed after their lord. The scaly beast burst out the water, and many spears through air they flew, and the knight's great sword struck mortal deep, and thus the Wycombe Wyrm was slew. Its body dragged, its guts removed, its skin now filled with straw, paraded through the streets in town, now forming part of Wycombe lore. And so we end our humble tale of worms and knights so bold, and as long as Wycombe town remains, this story must be told.
I love dark folklore, and I'm guessing because you're here that you do too. Let's stay in touch. All of my socials are listed below. And remember, if you want to help the channel, then like, share and subscribe. Enjoy. Well, Wyrd Wycombe was a great day out, but do dragons even belong in English folklore? I'm here with Juliette Wood to ask exactly that question. Juliette, what do you reckon?
Well, dragons are very much part of English folklore. I think actually there's probably a resurgence of dragons in English folklore, but they have always been part of it, particularly because St. George is the patron saint of England, and St. George is inevitably linked with the dragon. Not that St. George was originally English. He wasn't even originally linked with the dragon, but he's become a saint who defends his country, his area from a dragon. And in many stories, he saves a woman from a dragon. He's not a saint who marries, so you don't get the kind of prince saves the girl from the dragon and marries her and lives happily ever after. This is a very different story, but it is certainly one in which George, as a symbol of Christian righteousness, kills the dragon or defeats the dragon as a symbol of unrighteousness and saves a woman who is being potentially sacrificed to the dragon. Now, what often happens, and I think this is really interesting for what happens with these English festivals, George doesn't always kill the dragon. He's often depicted stabbing a dragon. But in the stories, it's the girl who actually ties her belt, her sash around the dragon's neck, leads it back into the city. And it's actually the city folk who kill the dragon. So it's actually quite an interesting, layered and nuanced story.
That's very interesting because in our Wycombe story, the villagers kind of rather ungallantly use the maiden as bait, really, to try and get the dragon out of the water.
This is quite common. You get a dragon who very often the dragons here aren't fire breathing and they don't guard hordes, unlike the Beowulf dragon, for example. They're environmental plagues, I think is probably the best way of describing them. They're very often associated with water. They will destroy the environment, burn the crops, eat the sheep. They're very fond of sheep, are dragons, and generally make it difficult for the people to earn a living. So you do have this idea that the dragon must be propitiated. And of course, very often the propitiation will be some young girl who is sent to be a sacrifice to the dragon and then is saved by a hero. Sometimes the hero is a saint. This is where George comes in. But very, very often the hero is the son of the local lord. So it becomes a way for whoever is the bigwig in the area, the count or the duke or whatever, asserts their protection and control over a particular area.
And that happens with our Wycombe Wyrm as well, because it is the local lord that comes in and it's a prover, really, isn't it?
It is. And again, this is very, very typical of dragon stories. The dragon is somehow the outsider, the forces of chaos that have to be conquered. And they're either conquered in various different ways, big national heroes, saints, or local heroes who are real, or at least the eponymous source of one of the local lordships.
Do we get objects or sort of just ephemera left over from this fight as provers in the local area?
Sometimes there will be something left, usually a bone, and the bone tends to be put up in the church to show so-and-so has killed the dragon. Here is proof. Here is a dragon bone. Mostly the dragon bones are whale ribs, big, large things detached from the original whale, whaling being such an important industry, stuck up in a church as this is a dragon bone. There's one very rare instance, and it's in Austria, not in England, it has to be said, where a skull from a rhinoceros, a woolly rhinoceros, was found, thought to be the dragon's skull. And the fountain in the town actually has a woolly rhinoceros sort of head. So you do have this notion that somehow bits of the dragon, well, prove that there was a dragon.
So the Wycombe Wyrm as reenacted at the festival is a heck of a story. Is that the version that you got from Clive Harper?
Not quite. I mean, the original story is called the Hughenden Dragon, or it's the story of the Hughenden Dragon. We rebadged it as the Wycombe Wyrm because the alliteration was too delicious not to use. YW at the beginning of Wycombe, and worm being the old English word for a slithering thing, a slithering beast. And our story varied slightly because we wanted to make it a little bit more of a dynamic story, because the original story featured basically this creature being killed by basically the locals. The locals, they actually used the young maiden who originally discovered this thing living in the river as bait, and then they all hid in the bushes, and when the worm came out, they went aha and killed it, and that was the story. Apart from the fact that they hung its skin up to dry, but we thought we want something a little bit more exciting, and it just so happens, we've got a church at St Michael around the place where the dragon myth is supposed to have happened, and St Michael is associated with fighting a dragon. And we thought, it'd be good to have a dragon and a knight fighting it out, wouldn't it? And we actually managed to find someone who had a full set of armour, who was willing to fight this dragon in the high street, which meant we had to make a bigger dragon than originally intended. But yeah, it's that's the only difference really. I mean, all the essential parts are there, other than who actually kills the dragon at the end.
But where did Clive Harper get his information from?
Interesting question. You're probably better asking Clive.
Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Good old days, there was the local library on the corner of the town. I spent many happy hours rootling away the Victoria County histories and some of the local history books they had there, linked in with some stuff. I went to the Folklore Society library a couple of times, which was up at University College in those days. Really fortunate in being able to pull odd strands together. Because in those days there was a group, rough group, no formal association or anything, under the name of Strange Wycombe. We used to have talks, events, we did a beating of the bounds, produced a booklet, and had the great help of one of our enthusiasts called Alan Cleaver, was the editor of the local free paper. So we got a lot of publicity. Someone said, you ought to jot those notes down. So I did.
And did you find a piece of information from an old journal?
One of the things I found, and excuse me if I quote, because it's a long time ago and my memory is not what it was a letter in the Gentleman's Magazine from 1758 by an Edgar Bochart, recounting the story of a water serpent he had come across whilst in the country, as he put it, in the summer. And he tells how he first thought this story fabulous, presumably in the old sense of the word of meaning not true. But he had sufficient curiosity to seek out a farm where the incident was supposed to be depicted on the wall. He went to the farm and on one of its walls found a painting of a dragon-like creature and a penciled record of its history.
In the year 1578, which appears above the painting, in a pond surrounded with briars near the house, a water serpent of an uncommon size was frequently seen by a woman who belonged to the house. When she went to get water, the creature, whenever she came, made advances towards her. The woman, terrified by his appearance, told the story to her neighbours, who advised her one day to sit near the pond side, while some of them stood behind the briars with an intention to shoot it if possible, when it advanced towards her. The thing was accordingly effected, and the skin of the creature, according to the tradition of the place, was hung up outside the house, stuffed with straw, for many, many years. But in the process of time, by being so exposed, decayed. Ever since the year when this thing happened, the story has been painted on the walls of the refectory or the hall, for I find the house was formerly, by the arms visible in many places, a hospital for the Knights Templar.
Part of the manor, it was divided, I think, by King John, and there was what was now the girls' school, and the other end was Temple Wycombe. Now, they owned the land.
Where Rockhalls Farm is, was
Yeah.
supposed to have been a Knights Templar settlement.
But the area we're talking about, where this all took place, was no longer anything to do with the Templars. It was actually owned by a family called the Wellesbournes. And I think they were more sort of wannabe Templars.
Is that near here?
Yeah, it's not far. I mean, it's a couple of miles just out of the town, in an area now called Four Ashes, which is, it used to be within the borough of Hughenden, which is why it was the Hughenden Dragon. So it was within that little parish, as it were.
Oh, right. Well, we should go and have a look then.
We should.
And if you think you've seen our next destination before, you may have. So, who were the Wellesbournes?
Well, they were a local family and they were quite well to do, very well thought of in the area, had quite a lot of money. I think most of their money, from what I understand, came from farming and owning a lot of tenant farms and outbuildings and things that they leased. But they were quite an interesting family when you read into them, because they did have kind of delusions of grandeur. They wanted to be grander than they actually were, and even went as far as making some quite spurious claims, to be honest.
About their ancestors?
Yeah, I think the most famous one is that they claimed that they had a direct line of lineage from Simon de Montfort. And for those people who maybe aren't aware, there was a period where the barons the barons of England weren't very happy about what was going on, and they actually had a bit of a revolution against the king and turfed the king off the throne. And for a short while, a guy called Simon de Montfort, he kind of became de facto king of England, so he's kind of royalty in a way. And the Wellesbournes claimed that they were descended from the 6th son of Simon de Montfort. The problem is he only had 5 sons. But the thing is, I mean, the local peasantry around here, I mean, they didn't have Google, so they could check, didn't they? They didn't do Ancestry.com or something to actually check what was what. So they sort of accepted it, and that conceit stayed with them, I think, for many, many, many years.
Yeah. Well, so they were they were a bit later, really. Did they go back as far as the Templars?
I think they wanted to. I mean, something we'll go and have a look at in a minute. They definitely tried to emulate or give the impression that some of their ancestors had been part of the Templars. And there was a little bit of a connection around here, because there's still a place now called Temple End, and there was, I believe, a Knights Templar hospital. It's probably a Knights hospital, but there was a hospital or something at one point, not far from here, within a couple of miles. But no, there's no evidence that they had any Templars at all in their ancestry. In fact, they seem to have nailed a lot of this to the fact that there is a town elsewhere in England, in the north of England, called Wellesbournes, which did have a connection with the Templars. And I think they kind of rode off the back of that, because they weren't to do from that town, as it were. But the name was the same. So I thought, let's go for it.
Some members of the family of Wellesbournes in the reign of Henry VIII claimed, without any ground whatsoever, to be descended from the Montforts. They caused to be made and placed in the chancel aisle at Hughenden a monument to a fictitious ancestor, and had the arms of Montfort and Wellesbournes, with some differences, carved on an older effigy, which they found there. It is enough to say that they are all very rude, all very much alike, and all totally unlike anything ever seen elsewhere. They are probably the work of some local stonemason. Even apart from their incongruous heraldry, these wretched old guys are so manifestly spurious.
Some of the effigies have got sort of royal emblems on, like lions, the double-tailed lion, which was associated with Simon de Montfort, and their own crest, which is supposed to be a griffin. They seem quite dragony for a griffin. I mean, a griffin's a cross between a lion and an eagle, isn't it? It's meant to have a beak. Some of them do look a bit beakish, some of them don't. And they did actually try to insist that they were put in the central aisle of this church, but the minister at the time said, nope. Even the booklet you can buy in the church here, has a little bit of a mocking tone when it talks about the Wellesbournes and their claims to royalty. And they also added another quite macabre aspect to it, which isn't anything to do with real heraldry. The image of the griffin, dragon, or whatever it happens to be that's on their coat of arms is clutching a figure. Now, if you talk to the Royal College of Arms or talk to anyone involved in heraldry, this isn't a standard heraldic beast. There's no instance of a heraldic beast clutching a victim, and it does look almost like it's a small child, because it's quite a small figure. So I think they did this to try and tie it in with the local legend of the Hughenden dragon, personally. This dragon that's supposed to be terrorising the landscape, and the story goes that the locals killed it, but I think the Wellesbournes are trying to hint that they were involved in the killing as well, and a little bit of St George or St Michael attached to that. If you go to the site where the old Rockhalls mansion was, the manor house, which the Wellesbournes lived in, they had all these stone carvings. They had a bit of a penchant for stone carvings. Again, all part of this, look how grand we are, we're descended from royalty. And when the Rockhalls manor was knocked down, a lot of the stone bits and pieces were distributed around the other buildings on the estate. And if you look at the ones that are on the front of the buildings, there is this sort of griffiny, dragony sort of figure. It's meant to be a griffin segriant, I think it is, which is sort of rearing up. It's not meant to be holding a child or a victim or anything. And they are on the fronts of some of the buildings. But the main body of the stonework actually came here to the church.
So we've heard that in 1758, Edgar Bochart visited this grand house and saw a mural on the wall. Do we know anything about that?
Not much, but there is a little bit. We know that, Bochart, or Bochart, however you pronounced his name, he saw it, I think, in 1758. And he reckoned at that point it was at least 40 years old. And it had been augmented and changed, and some wings had been added and some legs. So it was possibly more of a serpent figure originally. It got turned more into a dragon. But he claimed that it was done by a local artist called John Rowell, who was more famous as a stained glass artist, and he had a shop in what's now Crendon Street in High Wycombe nearby. And Rowell, there's still a few of his bits extant around the country.
There isn't much John Rowell original stained glass left, but this bit was left to the National Trust in 1956. Now it's at the Vyne in Hampshire.
That the site is less than a mile away. Sadly, that the manor house was demolished in the late 18th century. Although Rockhalls farmhouse is still standing, which is supposedly where this mural was painted, it certainly wasn't there in recent history when this legend, the whole dragon legend, was unearthed in the 80s. The guys who unearthed the legend did go and have a look to see if they could find out whether it still exists. No, the mural's not there anymore, sad to report. But Rockhalls Farm, where this mural is supposed to be, is still there. It's a private house now. And Brand's Lodge, just across the road from it, which was another one on the estate, has got one of the coats of arms on the front. So there's some of the stonework originally from the manor there.
Fantastic.
It's only about a mile away.
So, it was back into the car, and we had some precarious parking to look at the exterior of Brand's Lodge with its parvenu Wellesbournes heraldry. We also got some pictures of the stonework on Rockhalls Farm, and then we met Lee, the farm's owner, who let us have a look at her garden.
So this is your pond that was part of the moat?
Yes. When we moved in, this was full of farmyard junk, but now we've, recreated it as a pond, which is part of the moat, which goes round here, across the road, the other side, in the ditch, and then over there, across the field, and along that hedge line, part of Simon de Montfort's, allegedly, hunting lodge. And a lot of the stone was used to repair Windsor Castle, apparently. It's the same sort of stone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's quite possible, with this being the farmhouse, and the farmhouse is mentioned in the original story from the 1700s, so it's quite possible that this may have been the pond that the worm, the dragon, was supposed to have popped out of.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But they killed it,
They did.
as they did, and hung the skin up on the front of the house. But sailors used to bring back sort of all sorts of animals, didn't they, in those days?
They did,
Plants
they did.
and animals. It was probably an iguana or something like that.
So now we've found the origins of the Hughenden dragon, or as he's more recently known, the Wycombe Wyrm. He seems to have dipped out of public view for a while, especially after the demolition of the Wellesbournes Grand House. But he gets a quick and rather disparaging mention in the 19th century.
One of those absurd stories which have a tendency to retard the human mind in its progress to a rational improvement, and which are therefore to be discountenanced by every friend of historical truth.
Lipscomb might have been missing the point of dragon stories.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they're not meant to be natural history documentaries, are they? I mean, no, the story did persist. We know that it persisted because when the dragon story was refound, when it was resurrected in the mid-80s, and I can't remember whether it was Alan Cleaver or whether it was Clive Harper, but one of them, they wrote up a feature for the local newspaper, and as a result of the story in the newspaper, they got a letter.
I was born in that area and remember my father telling us when young, I'm now 85 years old, of a story of a woman and a baby in a pram being swallowed up by a dragon from the pond between Four Ashes and Terriers. I lived at Four Ashes for over 20 years, and there's a spot behind the farm on a footpath between Four Ashes and Hazelmere reputed to have been where Simon de Montfort had his castle. There is still a small moat and a deep ditch dating from about the 12th century, the same as Hughenden Church, I think. As a child, I was always afraid of the pond and the story.
So it sounds as though the story was present in some form or other right into the 20th century then.
Pretty much. I mean, it was kind of rediscovered by Clive, in the mid-80s, but it's always been there lurking in the background. I mean, we've found a few little examples where it's been mentioned in books, but it kind of didn't make it into... I mean, there's been lots of books published about, Great British Dragons, things like this, but it didn't quite make it into some of those books. But it's now definitely there. It's absolutely there. Now, thanks basically to Clive and Alan.
Well, since he's back for good, what can we expect from the Wycombe Wyrm in 2027?
Okay, well, we're planning at the moment. We've got lots of ideas how we can make it bigger. We've already started fundraising, as we did last year with tokens. This year we've got lapel badges and we've got cloth badges. We're in discussion with some of the more local Morris sides, so we can get more. So we want more music, more Morris, possibly take it into the evening. High Wycombe's got this culture month. They're trying to bring back some nightlife to Wycombe, so we'd like to run it later into the evening, maybe with a bigger craft market. We've even got the local vicar from All Saints Church next door wanting to get involved, saying perhaps could we have a dragon display within the church so we can get local schools or communities to make their own dragon, which we can have on display. So we can make it a much bigger community event this year is our plan for it. So it will happen 7th of Feb, I think.
7th of February, yeah.
It's going to be Sunday the 7th of Feb, first Sunday in February. We're planning now. We're already working on it and negotiating with partners to get involved with us this year.
Now that we've found the origin of the Wycombe Wyrm, I'm reminded of the words of folklorist Jacqueline Simpson.
A wider function of the dragon legends is to embody the whole community's pride, its conviction that it is in some way superior or even unique. A dragon is a claim to fame which any rival village would be forced to envy. But it is a claim which often seems to be accompanied by a twinkle in the eye.